by insulin and epinephrine outside the cell, triggering these cascades, which we've been looking at, right, to impact various activities going on with this glycogen particle, such as to either make it bigger or make it smaller, right? Because you can imagine, right, a lot of this activity, it's not so much that we need to like initiate new glycogen particles with glycogen and all that. Particles may be of a certain size, and then they can get bigger. Or if we're going to take glucose off of them, right, well, we don't necessarily have to take away the whole particle. We can make it like half size when we've got enough glucose. So now we have half-sized particles. Okay, that works. Right. So a lot of the activity is occurring on the surface by virtue of these competing enzymes. Right. So this phosphatase PP1 is a busy actor here. It can take phosphoryl groups off of glycogen phosphorylase, right, which would inactivate it. It can take them off of GS, which would activate it. So this is why GP and GS have to be their activity has to be inversely dependent on whether they're phosphorylated or not. So, you know, it didn't have to come out exactly the way it is, but if GP is phosphorylated, it's active. That means that GS, if it's phosphorylated, cannot be active because it's in the same particle and they're both being operated on by this enzyme. Right? So this enzyme, if it did both at the same time, you'd basically be activating both. It would be like a futile cycle in the context of glycogen in that case. So that would not be good. So PP1 is bound in this complex, but it's helped to be bound by this other protein called GM, which is a glycogen targeting protein. So when insulin acts through its pathway, it phosphorylates GM, and the phosphorylated GM activates PP1, right? And the PP1, through insulin, takes the phosphate off of glycogen synthase, thereby activating it, which we want. It takes the phosphate off of glycogen phosphorylase, too, right? Thereby inactivating it, which is also what we want. Right? And it takes the phosphate off of phosphorylase kinase, thereby inactivating it, thereby causing this to not become activated, which is also what we want. You can go back to the cascade, but the dephosphorylation of all of these is what insulin wants. Okay. So epinephrine is coming in here, wanting the opposite effects. Right? So if epinephrine comes in and influences and tries to influence something, what it does is it can phosphorylate an inhibitor protein that forms a complex with PP1 and takes it out of there. If it's out of there, it can't do what insulin wants it to do. If it's not doing what insulin wants it to do, then it must be doing what epinephrine wants it to do. So epinephrine's stealthy little trick is to just pull the guy out of there. Because when he's in there, when PP1 is in there, insulin is like winning the war here. Right? Insulin wins if PP1 is stuck in this particle. I got to get it out of there. Okay, I'm going to bring in this inhibitor protein by virtue of my cascade, and I'm going to have that protein bind PP1 and say goodbye to the particle. Another thing it can do is it can phosphorylate GM at another position besides the first position, and when it's phosphorylated in the second position, this comes off, right? And when this comes off, the PP1 kind of goes away because PP1 needs GM to associate. So it needs one phosphate on GM to associate. Insulin is happy. Put a second one on there by virtue of this, and it's gone.
What's giving the GM the second phosphorylate?
PKA looks like. PKA. If not PKA, something else. But it looks like PKA. Okay, questions? So what we're going to do next time is we're going to review this stuff. And this slide is basically the beginning of the review. So you've gotten most of the material, right? That's also review. And this is tying it together with an enzyme and glycolysis. Have a good weekend.